Welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. I'm Ryan Suhr. With me, as always, my co-host Don Helbig. We have a very special show today and a special guest. But before we get started, remember to follow us on YouTube. Subscribe on there because we got some really cool stuff going on YouTube. If you prefer the audio version, though, look for us on your favorite podcast apps and follow us on Twitter at attractions_GRP. Don, take it away.
Well, if you like fireworks, you go to the different amusement theme parks in the industry and you've seen fireworks shows, there's usually one name that's synonymous with those shows, and we're talking Rozzi. We'd like to welcome to the Attract Group podcast, Joe Rozzi.
So,
Thank you guys for having me.
welcome aboard, Joe. Well, tell us about yourself and about Rozzi's Famous Fireworks. What are you involved with?
Well, right now we are still a family business. It's ran by myself, which I'm fourth generation. Three of my sisters are owners. My sister Nancy is current president because she's the oldest, and my nephew Mike, who's fifth generation. We are have grown quite a bit over the past 10 years to you survived a pandemic and somehow made it to the other side to be probably about twice as big as we were mid 2010s.
Wow.
We are Cedar Fair's fireworks vendor at 70 of their amusement parks, including Kings Island here, plus numerous shows around the country. We're overseas. We have a factory that we own an interest in Italy. We do fireworks in Europe, as far away as Moscow.
Wow.
We've grown quite a bit over the past 10 years.
Well, Joe, your family, long history in the pyrotechnic business. Tell us about how your family got involved in it and, just kind of your path
Yeah,
to where we are today.
Yeah, like I said, I'm fourth generation. My great grandfather came from a region in Italy that was known for fireworks, right outside of Naples, and emigrated here right around the turn of the century. As a matter of fact, I think the Ellis Island entry was 1900. My grandfather was five. They made a stop in New York for a few years, and then eventually ended up in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, where my great grandfather had a factory there, made fireworks. Grandfather worked for him. They didn't always see eye to eye, so my grandfather decided, hey, we're doing fireworks at Coney Island, which, 10 nights, the center around the 4th of July, 10 nights at the end of the year, kind of unheard of. So he decided maybe that's a good place for me to move to. Found a nice little piece of property right over here in Loveland, and had a source of powder right up the road from here at King Powder. And we've been here, ever since. Shot at Coney Island all the way through 1971, and then made the jump to Kings Island in 1972. So, I mean, a long history. Most of my family, I'm the youngest,
Mhm.
grew up at Coney Island. So they tell me stories about, I was born in 67, so I was young. So they would tell me stories about what, because there was always family picnics around fireworks shows and stuff. I grew up at Kings Island, so that's where I spent my youth. A number of stories that we could get into that we could talk all night about, but, Kings Island's always had a soft spot for me because that's kind of where my career started.
Yeah, Coney Island, you mentioned, that was my earliest memory of seeing fireworks.
Mhm.
Was at that park, especially toward the end in 70, 71, and my introduction to the Rozzi name.
Mhm.
Awesome. So, Don, you mentioned the Rozzi name. So that kind of leads me to my next question. So, Joe, obviously your last name is Rozzi, even for the layperson, and especially the Cincinnati region or the super region, Rozzi is a name that's associated with fireworks. What's it like growing up with a famous name like that? It's like when you swipe your credit card, do people ever say like, "Hey, are you related to them?" Or
They do, yeah,
they do?
yeah. I mean, it was a funny story. My father never liked that. It was very embarrassing to him. So, whenever if we would go to lunch, because we used to do that when I was working in the summer, if somebody recognized him and said something, we never went back to that restaurant.
Wow.
He was funny like that. But it's kind of interesting. I mean, my daughter's a teacher at a local high school, so she gets asked that question. My wife, are you related? I get, are you related? Yeah. Yeah,
I get that
it's
all the time.
it's fun. It's fun. It's humbling. It really is humbling.
Yeah. Well, it's sometimes it's about I'm not the star of the show, the fireworks are the star of the show. And you
Exactly.
just got to remind yourself of that sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, well, Joe, fireworks, they've come a long way, from the days when they were shot by hand. Tell us about the technology behind shooting synchronized shows in today's world that you see?
Yeah, so digital firing systems have been around since probably the late 80s, and they've improved and improved. But at the end of the day, they're very simple systems. They have to do a very simple function, and that's fire an E match or electric match at a certain time. So the fireworks still have a mind of their own. So you do your best to calculate lift times and things like that by testing and making sure that things are consistent. But the firing is really where it really shines is in intricate, mine shots and comet shots where you can sip and do strafes. So those are EMATs right into the powder. So the effect happens instantaneously. That's where it really shines. So the systems haven't changed a whole lot. They've improved in their functionality and their simplicity, and in their ability to fire faster, fire more firing modules. Their timing. I mean, we were using, stopwatches and voice cues. Then we went to time code driven. Now, most recently, we're using the GPS feature, which has solved a lot of issues, especially remote sites. Really, the big changes were in the design software. So prior to design software, you basically were laying in line by line of typing in what the effect was, where it's coming from, copying, pasting it up to 45 times, separating out by 1/10 of a second, and all of that was done manually. Now it's visual. So we can actually work within a visual simulation where we're choosing an effect that the VDLs are really, really close, probably 85-90% to what the effect actually looks like. And all we have to do is drag it, grab it, and drag it and drop it into however many positions we want, then play it back and see, does that work? And if you put the video side by side with a live video of a display, it's eerily accurate. And the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, that's what it really looks like. Because we don't see shows.
Yeah, you're on the
Down
ground.
underneath it. So that's where the technology is improved. Fireworks themselves still function pretty much the same way. There was an attempt to put digital firing inside the shell itself, but it was very expensive and cumbersome. So, but I think that maintains the beauty of fireworks because once it lights, it kind of lives. So it's kind of got a mind of its own. So.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where the technology is going, and it's exciting to see where it's going to go to next.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you say that because anytime we have like a field expert on the show, we always ask like, what's progressed with it or whatever. And there's always two answers: computers or cell phones. One of the two. In this case, it's computers, but you'll be launching off your cell phone before you know it.
And there's systems out there that'll already do that. So, yeah.
So one of the most well-known fireworks shows, probably in the country, is Riverfest down on the river. For those listening, you might have heard of it as like the WBN fireworks. It's Toyota WBN for a while. I think it's Western and Southern.
Western and Southern WBN fireworks, yes.
So what goes into like doing a show like that? Like, well, more specifically, how did Rozzi's get involved with that? It's such a large show.
It was a chance phone call that my sister Nancy answered back in 1977. Got a phone call from Frank Wood, who was station manager at the time. I think at the time it was still a family-owned radio station.
WBN, right?
Yeah, WBN. Yeah. That hey, it's their 10th anniversary. They wanted to do a big fireworks show on the river. And okay, never really been heard of. We've done stuff for the Reds and stuff like that back then, but nothing like this. So first show happened. They were playing music at the radio station, and we were shooting fireworks.
Yeah.
And it became such a success that first year. It drew such a big crowd that let's do it again, and then let's do it again, and then it just kept going to where it just kept growing to where it is today, which I think this past year was 46 years.
46 years.
Yeah, so it's gone through several different sponsors, and of course, radio has changed quite a bit. But the show has maintained purity to the fact that it's just a fireworks show with rock music.
Right. And just to piggyback off that, it's been on the river every year with the exception of 2020, obviously. And then you guys shot them at Kentucky Speedway. Why don't you give us a little backstory on that?
Ooh, that's a long story. That's a long story.
We got time, Joe. We got time.
That's a long story that worked within a span of about a month.
Wow.
So the station, Mustard and Southern, Mr. Barrett in particular, they still wanted to do the show. And it was a matter of coming up with a plan. So we kind of had some experience with that because we managed to maintain about 50% of our 4th of July shows by doing these hybrid, stay at home and watch from this park or watch from this parking lot and stuff. So naturally the idea was, well, let's try and do the same thing. So plan number 1 was 5 parks around Cincinnati and northern Kentucky. We had picked out 5 different sites. They were remote sites. Nobody would really know what was going on. It was a one-day setup, low end, set it up, shoot it, and go, so it wouldn't draw attention. City of Cincinnati was too uncomfortable. We met with Mayor Cranley at the time, and he was too uncomfortable. Okay. Plan number 2. Hey, there's this big parking lot up at an amusement park.
Right.
I wonder if that's available. So reached out to Mike Kuntz, and he was pretty favorable, but I understood they were open.
Yeah.
And it would have been disruptive. So as we're standing out in the parking lot, I look across the highway. I said, well, what about the tennis center? So that was plan number 3. So we went over there and chatted with them, and they have a policy of no fireworks on their property. All right, well, let's shut that down. See, what has to make this happen is television.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So all of these locations had infrastructure for television, be it fiber optic or someplace to set up cameras.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of started scratching our heads, and then what about Kentucky Speedway? So we were doing fireworks there. So I called TJ was his name at the time. And he said, well, there's a problem. Our infield's covered with Amazon trucks. All right, well, what about your parking lot across the street? It's empty. So, okay, we went down, met with them, met with the local government. Channel 12 came down, scoped out camera sites. Everything was, this is it. I mean, so that was on a Monday. On a Friday, I got a text message from a guy named Doug Lillibridge at Channel 12, and all he said was, I'm so sorry. What are you talking about? So I called Doug. What's going on? He said, well, Western and Southern just pulled the plug.
Really?
Neat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I gave it the weekend. So Monday morning, John Barrett and I usually meet at least once or twice a year. Very nice guy, loves the city, loves Cincinnati, loves all the events, loves the fireworks. And I said, you know what? I've got his office number. Why not? So I called him, and he answered. I'm like, uh-oh, came on. So, hey, John, how you doing? We chatted for a little bit. I said, what made you decide not to do the fireworks, if you don't mind? And he started talking in a way that says he really didn't want to cancel. I said, okay. So we started going back and forth a little bit. And he said, let me get back to you in a day or two. And in a day or two, we were back on. This was the middle of August.
Yeah.
We hadn't got a soundtrack, hadn't had anything designed. We're in a new location. And we had to keep it as quiet as we could. So the station did a great job of throwing people off by coming up with these, bogus pictures from this place and that place. And I didn't tell any of the crew. No one knew where it was going to be until the day before, because we didn't want it out. We didn't know if it got out on social media, if they were just going to pull the plug and that was the end of it. So finally we get down on site, and there's this big hullabaloo going on Facebook with a picture from somewhere in Hamilton of one of our trucks, a truck with our logo. And that was it for the next week. Everybody was convinced it was in Hamilton.
I remember that.
So you, Dustin, right? Dustin Purvis?
Yep.
He's getting phone calls and text messages. Hey, come on, man, give me a heads up. Where's it at? And we just played that all week long. And at the end of the day, some local people showed up because, you can't keep quiet.
Yeah, they're going to see something.
No,
Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, Kentucky State Highway Patrol were prepared to shut that road down. They had roadblocks up, and nobody came. And it was perfect. And it was probably the funnest Riverfest we've ever done because it wasn't on a barge.
Yeah, that's true. I know. I was going to point out that 2020 is the only year where this is out of your mouth. You figure we can set up this large fireworks show, shoot it, and no one would notice. That's the complete opposite of what you would want to do any other year.
Exactly. And it turned out great. And I think a lot of people were very, very happy that the tradition kept going. And I think that was important to all of us.
It was.
Yeah, that's certainly a memorable show for you because of the
Mhm.
circumstances and everything, but you've done thousands of shows. Is there one that kind of stands out as a favorite?
I'll have to say currently, it's Kings Island last summer. Kings Island's 50th.
Yeah, the fun fireworks and things.
Yeah, it was a very humbling because it was a historic accounting of not only the park, but our relationship with the park. And I remember having a conversation, I think it was opening night, and I was talking to Ken Parks. And if anybody remembers back in the 70s, the Yogi Bear announcement,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
Well,
Yogi Bear.
and with Hey Mr. Rozzi on with the show, and they were trying their hardest to buy the rights to that, to put it in the soundtrack. But Hanna-Barbera wouldn't have it. So, and when he told me that, I was like, really? And it just kind of hit me. This is so, yeah. So for me personally, growing up at Kings Island and going up there at night when I was a kid with my dad to watch the fireworks, he'd give me $2 to go play skee ball. He dropped me off at the back gate underneath the racer,
Yeah,
right there where the big slide was. And I would do that. That was my summer with him. So I'd ride up there every night because we always tested stuff every night from the day's production. So I go play skee ball and sit at that little hamburger place and get something to eat, and then he'd pick me back up. Always having to tell whoever games attendants that it's okay, I can go back here because nobody made a big effort to stop me from going through the gate. Here I'm this 10, 12-year-old kid just walking through. Dad said, just act like you know where you're going. And I did that for years.
yeah. Those shows you guys did, the parks, or Kings Island in the 70s and 80s. I mean, that was woven into the fabric of my youth. Just it was a big thing every night that I would go. You wanted to get your position
Mhm.
to watch
Yep.
the fireworks on International Street, and just a big deal. Still is.
Yeah, that was my first show on my own.
Yeah, it's what's funny is about even like the 5 minute Kings Island show that went on for years. It's like it's hard to drill into people's heads that like live around here and aren't well traveled when it comes to parks. Like it's not common to have nightly fireworks every night when the park closes at 10.
Mhm.
I mean, that's 100 and something shows a year, isn't it?
It was up to 120 at one time. Every night there was a 10 o'clock close. And back when we were growing up, you didn't go back to school until after Labor Day.
Right.
So when the schedules changed and it started becoming like late August, mid August, park closed at 8. That's the only reason it changed. Other than that, we were down, every night of operation.
100 something days in a row.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I imagine when you shoot these fireworks, you don't do them yourself. It's clearly a team effort.
Mhm.
Do you have to be named Rozzi to shoot fireworks with you?
Oh gosh, no, there's not enough of us.
Well,
There's
how can you get involved if you want to shoot fireworks on a professional level?
So we ask everyone to reach out to us through our website, RozziFireworks.com. You can reach out to me through my Facebook page, Joe Rozzi, and just let us know if you're interested. And then we'll I usually meet with new people to see how much of an interest do you have.
Mhm.
Is this something you're looking at? Do you have the time? This is how it works. We're on weekends in the summertime. They're long days. It's out in the weather. I'm just going to throw it all at you right now so you're not surprised.
Right.
And then, come to our school. And our school this year is April 22nd at Clinton County Fairgrounds. Just go to our website and you can sign up for the school. Come out, and our operators are always looking for new assistants. We're always looking for new people that we can train and develop into lead techs. Especially this year. Last year was huge. This year looks like it's going to be even bigger. So yeah, we're always looking for help. So that's the best way to get a hold of us.
And we will put a direct link to the shooter school that you mentioned in the description on both YouTube and the podcast app. So if anyone's interested, I know a guy who's worked for him before that may have been an assistant for a long time,
Yep.
but still considers himself an assistant
Yep.
now. So why don't you, since we're kind of on the subject, you mentioned like it's all weather and stuff like that. If someone, just very 60 seconds, all right, describe what a day is like shooting a fireworks show for somebody that has never been exposed to it on a professional level. So if you're an assistant, it's your first show.
If you're an assistant, it starts out it depends on the size of the show. It could start out as early as 8 a.m. or as late as noon.
Mm-hmm.
You arrive on site, you have a lead technician give you instruction. It's moving fairly heavy equipment, setting up our mortar racks. That takes, some of the day, and then it's actually handling the product. loading. So, weather becomes a factor because they're not, fireworks do not like wet weather. So sometimes you're loading under a tent. It's just working with a lot of your hands. So the heavy work happens at the beginning, loading, getting it ready to shoot, uh, excitement leading up to showtime, be it 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, whatever time it is. There's that 10, 15, 20 minutes of, of excitement, and then 15 minutes of waiting, and then the next 2 hours of breaking all that equipment down and put it back on a truck.
Right.
And that's a typical day. And as long as the show goes well, at the end of the night, you've given a number of people, hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands, or in the case of Riverfest, hundreds of thousands of people, a night to remember.
Exactly. Now, I've heard from this friend that's definitely not me, who's worked for you as an assistant on several shows, that some of the most rewarding things is like you can, well, first of all, you get the best seat in the house. Well, you could argue what the best seat in the house is, but you're as close as you get legally,
Yeah.
so that's kind of really cool. But also, for most shows, you can hear oohs and ahs and stuff, and that kind of makes it entirely worth
It does.
It's like anything else that if you do anything in entertainment, it's a lot of hard work, and then you hear the reaction and stuff, and that's where the real payment is.
Yeah, and sometimes we're a little far away from the crowd, um, but you're not so far. You can still hear that, and that's why we do it. That's why we spend this entire day out in 90-degree heat,
Mhm.
or in the wintertime in 20-degree weather, and do it because you're entertainers.
Right.
We just don't do the performing. The fireworks do the
Yeah, I mean, you're a set piece, and the stage is
There you go.
holding the fireworks. But yeah, you're right. And then what the thing that's always gotten the person that I know that's definitely not me, that's been an assistant for Rozzi's. I wonder if they'll ever pick up on the fact that it's actually me they're talking to. But anyway, but it's the fact that like with fireworks, that's always the climax of the event. That's always when you go to Kings Island, you stay until 10 because you want to watch the fireworks. 4th of July, you do picnics and games and stuff, and then the night is when the fireworks are. And you know that. I mean, that doesn't change even no matter what side of the firing system you're on.
No, it doesn't. It's exciting for all of our people. It's exciting for our audiences. It's exciting for your clients, and those are the people who are hiring you and entrusting you to do a great job. And it's fireworks. There is an inherent danger and a risk to it, that can happen with any genre of entertainment. That's why we're further away than everyone else. Things can go wrong because these things live and breathe.
Hmm.
So you can do everything you can to ensure safety, or to ensure a malfunction doesn't occur, but it's going to happen once in a while.
Hmm.
And I mean, it happened to me once, and it sticks in the back of my head, and it probably forever will. So you pay a little bit more attention, you pay a little closer. Sometimes they become a pain in the butt, but there's a reason. And especially if I'm lead on a show, I didn't work shows this summer that I've done in probably 10 or 15 years. And you're the lead tech, you're responsible for what goes on that site. And anytime we've got shows out, and it's usually every weekend from March through the end of the year, I'm responsible. So and my phone's always on at 10 o'clock at night or at 10:30 at night, waiting for a phone call from whoever's out shooting. And as you know, if I don't get a phone call by 10:30, because I know how long your show was,
Right.
I'll call you,
Hmm.
just to make sure you guys are okay. And it's not to check up on you, it's to check on you.
Right.
Make sure you did that, and please text me when you get back to the facility,
Hmm.
so I know you got home safe, because I'm responsible for everybody.
Joe, you touched a little bit on what like a typical day is like if you want to pursue being a fire technician. What would it be like if you want to start doing that as a career? Is it, kind of walk through what that lifestyle is like? Do you travel a lot? Can you just stay in like one particular place like Cincinnati and do it? What's involved there?
It's as far as a career goes, there's the potential for traveling, sure. And we do a lot of shows around the country all throughout the season. And some of the winter season is a little bit slower. So it might be a January, February where there isn't much going on, but for the rest of the summer, it's busy. Like for instance, we have two other Cedar Fair parks that are spinning up their 50th this summer.
Hmm.
So they're going to be doing a stretch of a couple of months. Kings Island's bringing their show back. That's from what I understand, it's going to be another 85 or so nights. So there's a lot of potential for more seasonal. If you want a career at fireworks, it's get in to a company on the ground floor and just kind of work your way up. I mean, as we grow, we're hiring. As we grow, we're building in our facility. Um, we're adding, not only seasonal help, but we're adding year-round help. We brought on a couple of young kids, and it's a young person's job. I'll be the first one to tell you that.
Well, that was one of my questions. Was it seems to me like it's a young man's game
Well, if you're out shooting shows, yeah. I mean,
or young person's.
I'm not going to say that I did. I mean, I loaded trucks all summer. We load for the 4th of July, which is our season. That's our busy time. I think about 60 trucks this year is what we rented. And I loaded quite a few of them. And it just kept going right after the 4th of July. So it's physical. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Whether you're in shape at 55 to do physical work or not. But, you want to find people that you can develop. You want to find young people you can develop and build a niche for them so they can work their way up. And, as we grow, we're going to continue to have that need.
So 60 trucks, the logistics behind that are astounding.
Oh, it's a nightmare, especially with, so let's talk about the after effects of COVID. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2020 was an interesting year. We managed to salvage about 50% of our business. Retail went through the roof because people couldn't go to fireworks shows. So I remember driving home from Kings Island on that 4th of July. I'm coming up 22 through my township, Hamilton Township, and I'm watching fireworks coming from neighborhoods I've never seen before. It's like, whew. So, but our displays were down 50% solid. And, we managed. 2021 came around and there was still some uneasiness, but then there were others. No, we're gung-ho, we're going, we're doing our shows. So it got busy. We had a few guys who had been shooting for us for a long time who decided, they enjoyed their 4th of July off. They were older. I think I'm going to take this as an opportunity to retire.
Mm-hmm.
So finding help was difficult in 21.
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, because I think Kings Island couldn't staff 2 shifts for a bit. Because I remember some of the 10 o'clock closings changed to 8.
Well, I mean, not just Kings Island, like Waffle House.
Oh, yeah.
24 hours.
Oh gosh, everybody, yeah.
So, I mean, but I imagine places like any theme park and where you have to have a lot of people for like a certain amount of time,
Mhm.
is probably way worse than
Oh,
it
it
is
was.
anywhere else.
It was a nightmare. But there were some silver linings. Some new people came around that were itching to kind of do something and were eager to work. Um, but the other issue was rental trucks.
Mm-hmm.
The automotive shortage affected rental trucks. So we were scrounging for what we could get. We managed to get enough trucks in 21. 22 is a different story. Ryder always serviced us with at least 40 to 50 trucks, and we would get budgets for the rest. Ryder offered us, he said, I can promise you 20.
Wow.
I said, wait a minute. So I took a chance and reached out to U-Haul. We had rented from U-Hauls in 25 years, and they were more than willing to work with us. So between Ryder, budget, and U-Haul, we managed to make it all work. So that was the biggest thing. Then supply chain last year. And it wasn't just, we had a good inventory because we had some carryover still from 21. We managed to get a couple containers from overseas early enough in the year, which was right around this time last year. But whatever was going on in China with bookings, containers were getting stacked up in China. They weren't leaving. They weren't getting bookings on vessels. One of our manufacturers this time of the year last year called out to us and said, listen, I have to shut down production. I can't ship anything.
Yeah.
And I can't store anything. So he shut down. Some of the other manufacturers got together with our trade association and actually chartered a vessel. 300 containers of fireworks were on it, which that's pretty unprecedented. Well, it was supposed to depart April. Then it was the beginning of May.
Mm.
Then it didn't leave till the end of May. We wrote it off. We had 2 containers on it. That didn't show up until after the 4th of July. And some companies, it totally wiped them out. Everything they were purchasing were almost containers. So it really did a number on a lot of people. We got lucky. We got lucky. Then we got our stuff right after the 4th, and we could continue on.
Yeah.
And this year it's plus freight went up 300%.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's right. It's container fireworks from overseas is around 15,000 in 2019, 45,000.
Yeah.
And you had to buy the container.
Yeah.
So
Well, what's a container? I mean,
4 or 5,000.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, and the price of steel is constantly going
Yeah.
up. So that's,
And
you know,
copper went up, so our wire, our e-matches, the e-match manufacturer was spoon feeding the industry e-matches all season long. As he was getting copper, he was running it and shipping it as quickly as he was making it. It was probably the most stressful 4th of July season, summer season I've ever had. It was, it got us to a point where, okay, I don't trust anything. I don't believe anything. So we learned a lot, and we made changes. We made some adjustments, and we've got containers on the water now. We've got, we have to order 12 months out, especially from China, in order to get containers. So we're already looking at 2024. And, what's 2024 going to hold? I mean, I've been saying this for a while, so put my other hat on. Right, I'm a township trustee, I'm a politician. So Hamilton Township, which is where we are, got 1.2 million in CARES Act money, and then 2.4 million in ARPA funds. So you could almost do whatever you wanted with ARPA funds. So this little township got that kind of money. You imagine like surrounding cities, Cincinnati got 300 million.
mhm.
Well, that's done. So what we noticed was there was a lot of money out there. So what's going to happen this year and in 24?
Right.
To be seen.
Well, I mean, I guess that's always true.
It is.
know.
It is. But it's an influx of money that you never had, and it only comes once in a while. It only came once. So now what's going to happen in a couple of years when those, because you budget. What you do is you look at that money and you look at where do you spend money? Where's your money for fireworks come from?
Mhm.
Well, it comes from tax dollars. Well, if I can use this portion of money for projects in the city or wherever, and then I can reappropriate this for fireworks, hey, I can add to my fireworks budget.
Yeah.
And
That would be a terrible situation to be in as like local council or whatever, because money, there's only so much money. You know that as well as anybody else or
Mhm.
more. And there are things that need to be done. Fireworks are absolutely expendable, but they're also in demand from the citizens.
They are. That is the other thing. Our retail stores sold out in 2020, 2021, and 2022. And we've got a little 1,800 square foot store.
Mhm.
And more people just kept going through it and going through it. And we closed last year, or not last year, the year before, at 4 o'clock on the 4th of July. We had nothing left to sell.
Wow.
And I imagine that's happened, in a lot of retail stores. I heard one store down on the other side of town actually closed 2 days before the 4th of July. They just ran out of stuff.
Do you source the fireworks or the consumer fireworks from the same place where you get the professional stuff, or is that a completely different industry?
It comes out of China. It all comes out of China. There's different manufacturers that manufacture consumer and then also manufacture display fireworks. But some of them cross over. So essentially, they all come from a very similar province. Liang is home to, I want to say, about 30 different manufacturers. And even that industry has changed in China. It went from, 1,000 factories down to, I think, a total of 300-ish or so.
Yeah.
It's just not an industry over there that their young people want to do.
Mhm.
It's, we'd rather make iPhones in the clean room. And I get it. So we source a lot of our product out of Italy. And we work with, right now, 3 different manufacturers there, one of which we own an interest in, and then 2 others that can satisfy our need. And it's different. We shot a lot of it at Kings Island this summer. It's beautiful product, beautiful shells. A little bit more expensive, but not horrible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, now that you bummed us out, let's talk about the shots at Kings Island. So
Hey, we're depressed now.
yeah,
Thanks, Joe.
What's
we're
to
gonna have to
come?
take a break now. No, I'm just kidding. So okay, so I put on Twitter that we were that we were gonna have you on the show, and I was like, if you have any questions about theme park fireworks or fireworks in general, drop them here, and we're gonna get to those Twitter questions,
Okay.
but. Everybody was asking questions about fun fireworks in 50, which you already mentioned is,
Mhm.
your favorite show, and it's probably mine too, honestly.
Mine too.
So, for those of you who haven't seen it, pause the video now, look it up on YouTube, Fun Fireworks in 50 Kings Island 2022. It'll be the most incredible thing ever. So that involved regular shells in the air. It had close proximity fireworks off the roofs of International Street, which is, close to people, in flames. So a bunch of different, well, oh yeah, and by the way, drones, just to throw in the mix. So a lot of moving parts there. So why don't you talk about the challenges associated with a show that has so many facets to it?
I'm not going to say there were a whole lot of challenges to it because we're so familiar with the park.
Hmm.
We had done the rooftops at one time. We put flame effects around the fountain for haunt.
Hmm.
The aerial site is been established,
Yeah.
and then bringing all those elements together was, the tech services at the park was fantastic. I can only remember one night when I was a little upset with Nick, and when we were dropping time code, and come to find out, this is funny. Come to find out that our feet came off of tech services. Can I talk about this? Is this okay?
You and I can talk about it. He's going to just look the other way.
I was going to.
Well, in his defense, he probably didn't realize what was going on, but we were time code feed came off of tech services, and happened to be a night I'm there, and I'm watching the clock spin up, and all of a sudden it would stop, and then it start again, stop, start again. I'm like, what the heck's going on? And I'm radioing to Keener, and he's like, I said, yeah, but it's not dropping, but it kept stopping, and it was giving me a heart attack. Well, I guess Nick was looking at various video cameras around the park, and it was drawing bandwidth. And I guess he quickly realized what he was doing because he heard the radio chatter, so he stopped. And I'm like, oh,
This is before the show or during the show?
this was the last. I mean, I'm counting down 45 seconds, 44 seconds, because I've got a countdown clock and a time clock counting up.
Yeah.
So, but the people at the park, we've got such a great relationship with everyone at Kings Island that it was easy.
Hmm.
The challenging part, if there was one, were drones.
Yeah. New element.
It was a new element. We were unfamiliar with them, but we have a great partnership with Vergero, which is the manufacturer. So they were in town for the first week of rehearsals and operation, and really made it easy. What I did find is we had 5 drone pilots,
Hmm.
and all 5 of them were helicopter pilots.
Okay.
And it wasn't just about them being able to fly vertical aircraft. It was that they were very regimented and very detail oriented. And those guys, and especially guys like Zach Phillips, they made that show fly every night,
Hmm.
and were very upfront and honest when I'm uncomfortable because I've got rain coming.
Right.
So it was the design challenging, sure, but the execution, other than staffing, was, we have a great partnership
Yeah.
with Kings Island that goes back 50 years.
So I was concerned about this going into the interview. Just make sure that you and I aren't talking firework terms. For those of you who don't know what time code is,
Oh,
I'm going to give them the short of it. Time code essentially is like it's the language that the lights and the fireworks and everything speaks. So they know when to do what. This light changes from blue to red at this time. This firework shoots at this time. It's all on time code. So his concern with this anecdote before was that if there's erratic time code or no time code, there's no show. So that's what it comes down to.
yeah, digital clock.
Digital
That's
clock,
basically
exactly.
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Joe, the drones obviously were one of the most popular elements of fun fireworks in 50, and you see different fireworks shows now around the country and all incorporating drones. And for years, it was just fireworks.
Yeah.
Talk about that process for you in integrating drones into what you do?
Well, I'll start off by saying I was skeptical. I was skeptical about drones and fireworks together. Is this going to really work? Is this going to really work? And I think there was a need that the park wanted to tell a story with this show. And there were some concerns about how to do that. So we were able to make the drone package happen, but I was still skeptical. So you design both of the shows separate, right? So we're designing the fireworks display, and then we render a digital video, and okay, where are we putting drones? And that's where the show director, producer came in with the various images, how he wanted it to flow. And the couple of test flights we did, okay, look good. Okay, yeah, that's kind of cool. And then the rehearsal we did, that's really cool. And then we got to opening night. And so I was getting convinced that this is going to work well together. So we get to opening night, and I'm standing up at over almost under the main gate, and the show's starting, and you could see the drones take launching because they're flashing. And I turn around, and it's when the king, right before the King's Island logo, there's a. I'm assuming it was his father holding a little boy, and I tapped on his shoulder and I pointed up at the sky, and just then the King's Island logo came on, and this kid's eyes lit up. And it was and that was it. And I watched everybody. I was watching everybody around the top of International Street watching the show, and it was. I didn't watch the show. I was in awe of all of these people just standing there watching this. It was cool.
I mean, for me, I was just, in awe of how it all came together to.
I mean, it was. I heard they were talking about this at Disney.
Yeah. So you're still skeptical about drones, I
I
understand?
don't know.
No. Well,
No, it was. I guess I had to see it.
oh, yeah.
Over the years. Okay, so over the years, when they first started introducing digital firing systems, I mean, what?
Yeah.
You're gonna let a computer shoot it? I mean, and prior to that was what? You're gonna push a button? I mean, because I grew up with hand firing.
Yeah.
So every time it evolved into something different, sure, I was skeptical. But then, okay, oh, that's what you can do. Oh, okay. Oh, I could do this with a digital firing system. And then lasers. Well, lasers will be the next thing. Okay. But then when you integrate all of it together, okay, now this is cool. So it's just something I had to see because, I grew up with fireworks. I grew up doing fireworks. So you want to throw drones, and there's people that say, "Oh, drones will replace fireworks." And in some cities, they have. If you go out west for the 4th of July, they're drone shows.
Yeah.
They've gotten rid of their fireworks displays. So as a person in the industry, you step back. Okay, is this something I should be worried about, or is this something that we can work with?
Yeah.
So, but you get through that, and that opening night, I was like, wow, this is something else.
Yeah, I agree. It's just my anecdote. I had heard from people within like entertainment, and I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was a Rozzi person that they were going to run through the show the day before it was supposed to open, which is typical, in the industry. So I made my way up there, and I remember watching the show, and everyone's jaw was on the floor, and Don was there, and I mean, we didn't watch the show together, but I came up to him after the show, and I was like, I hope you like drones because you're stuck with them for the rest of your life because they went over so dang well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that absolute home run. I mean, I understand your skepticism. I mean, I really do. But with that being said, in practice, if anything, you can extend the show because there's less firework product you're shooting. If you do drone stuff for 5 minutes, you can technically make a 25-minute show out
You
of
can.
a similar
You can.
budget.
The limitation on drones currently is about 13 minutes of show time.
Yeah.
They can fly for about 20, but once they start a show, and then wind is a factor because if they're fighting wind, it's so we were getting drones landing at about 30% battery capacity, which, it's on the edge. They start to act up a little bit, anything lower than that. But you're right. I mean, you could launch them. You could shoot a fireworks and then launch them at some point in the show, do their thing. Fireworks come back in and out and in and out. And yeah, you're right. You can turn it into a longer show. Good.
Yeah. So two things are going to happen. One of two. Either they're going to improve the battery life, which they have with drones, but it's like a minute per year, or maybe the price will get down on drones enough that you would have more than one fleet on a show where they would trade out at some point.
Mhm.
But with the price tag on a show like that, not an option right now for most places, but maybe in the future. But let me ask you this. So another element of the show that was really a wow moment was there were flames around the Royal Fountain.
Yep.
Now, you've done flames for years during haunt.
Mhm.
These were different.
Yep.
Talk about the different technology between the two.
Yeah. So what we do for haunt are basically gas propane flame heads, and it just shoots a flame straight. Pressurizes, blows them. Nice, hot, bright flame. For haunt, it's got a scare factor, right?
Mhm.
So these are made by a South Korean company called Xplo. It's an X2 wave flame machine, and it's got a moving head,
Mhm.
and it uses isopar, a liquid alcohol, basically. So you can program their movement. You can program the speed. You can program how they shoot within that. So you've got more versatility to make them dance. And I think that was a good choice of because they wanted flame around the fountain. They actually wanted flame in the fountain. But that was a bit of an expensive endeavor. So this, I think this worked out better, but it was really cool. And how they were utilized, I think, was really cool. Actually, Brian Keeling came up with the programming for the flame units and did a great job.
Mhm. And he perfected it over the course of the first couple of weeks, and it got better and better each time.
He came up with a way to control it. You're usually controlling a programming with the lighting controller, right?
Hmm.
And you know how difficult a lighting controller is to program.
Right.
This was a Cobra, which is a wireless fireworks firing system that can be adapted to output DMX, which when we explain what DMX is, it's just basically
The kind of plug that
code
lights
language.
use.
It's a language, and
Yeah.
and you could program this in our design software or Finale design software
Mm.
and output it directly into the controller. It was a brilliant and inexpensive solution to an expensive problem.
Yeah.
And Brian came up with it, and yeah, it took him a little bit to get it, but we got it.
Well, I mean, nobody who saw it the first couple of days would know that it wasn't perfect, but I mean, maybe it was perfect and he made it more perfect
He
if you
just
think about it.
he likes to tweak things, which
He
he probably
does.
watched it and he went back and wanted to tune it up and tweak
He had
it.
me film it for him a few times.
Yeah,
Ahead of
no, and I
time.
get it. And that's what he's good at. He's good at that. He was good at coming up with that system. He's very talented about with when it comes to, and actually Tyler did the actual design of the fireworks show. Brian kind of tweaked it a little bit. So yeah, and he's a talented kid. He's not a kid anymore.
He's a talented 39-year-old.
Yeah. Okay, he's still younger than me.
So I want to circle back to Fun Fireworks in 50
Mhm.
again. One of the wow moments for me, and I know a lot of the guests that visited the park, was the fireworks coming off the
Mhm.
buildings.
Yep.
Now, when you have a show, Fun Fireworks in 50, 14 minutes, a lot of times shows are 10 minutes. How often can you shoot them off the buildings during a show before the audience becomes a little numb to that, maybe that effect?
If you do it too much, you're right. If you do it too much, if you sprinkle it in, open it, sprinkle it in here and there in appropriate moments, uh, and then finish it off towards the end with, the bigger a finale ask.
Right.
Yeah, if you try to do that all throughout an entire show, it starts to get kind of okay. All right, enough of this. So it's the same when you're doing a musical fireworks display with what we call one shots, which are these mine devices that shoot a plume. There's a time and a place for it.
Mhm.
If you just simply hit it for the entire thing, we stop watching.
Yeah.
It's like watching a fireworks show that's a 30-minute finale or a 15-minute finale. It sounds cool. The biggest fireworks show in the world, and it's
Well, it felt like the right
200 shells a minute.
Yeah, the right mix because
Yeah.
you were still every
It
time it
did.
went off, you weren't expecting it. Number one,
Mhm.
and it was still multiple times through it, but to me, it just felt like it was just the right amount.
Yeah, it was the right amount. I can't remember the number, but it came at the right moments.
I'm trying to do the math. I think it was about 24 per site or so. Does it sound right, or is it less than that?
It's 180 altogether, I think.
Okay. Don, do the
Divided by
math.
4.
I'm not a math person.
Okay. So we talked about Kings Island, we talked about Riverfest, and what are some other projects that Rozzi does, especially on a regular basis, that people might have heard about that didn't know you were associated with?
There's a number of shows we do around the city of Cincinnati. I mean, most of the events we're in Oak Park, Coney still on July 3rd, Fairfield, we went there for years. You know, most of the neighborhoods and cities surrounding Cincinnati and northern Kentucky, we're at Florence Y'all's for
Hmm.
their Friday night fireworks, Reds Friday night fireworks.
Red's in game too.
When it's the Reds game too, yeah, we have a scoreboard. They used to call it the exploding scoreboard. Still kind of do. And we've got some flame heads down there also for strikeouts.
Hmm.
We are we do a number of shows in and around Central Ohio, Northwest Ohio, Detroit Tigers. We do as well.
Okay.
Um, we are in, we're actually in Montreal every summer. So there's a fireworks competition. I don't know if you're familiar with it
Yeah.
at La Ronde,
Mhm.
Six Flags Park. And it's been going since '83. And over the years, things have gotten a little more expensive for them to bring in product overseas. So we help out some competitors by providing product and support, but we do the closing show. So there's 6 shows throughout the month of July. And then when the winners are announced, there's a closing fireworks display. And we've been doing that for the past 7 years.
Mhm.
This summer, we're going to be in Cannes for a fireworks competition. We're hoping to return to more shows in Europe because since 2020, they're slowly coming back. But in 2019, we did, I want to say 7 or 8 shows across Europe. We were in Hanover, we were in Nice, Marseille, Torino, Moscow. Um, we're hoping that starts to come back, but we are competing in Cannes this July. You know, it's just, and then it's everything else. I mean, the weddings and church festivals, and
Mhm.
you know, that's our thing. We've had customers that have been with us for, well, 50 years. That you know, are just stable mates. That FC Cincinnati, we do all of their rooftop pyro and field pyro when they do it. Um, yeah, it's UC,
Yeah.
UC football, UC basketball. Hopefully, with the Big 12, they'll be doing more.
Mhm.
We'll see, but
Xavier, you still have Xavier?
no,
No,
do
Xavier. Okay. All right. Well, that's awesome.
Joe, you've seen over the years you've been involved with fireworks and putting together these shows. You've seen different technology in terms of how to launch the fireworks. And now you've seen drones being integrated into shows. Let's look down the road, say 10 years from now. What are some of the things you think are possibilities to be the next thing?
I mean, I think right now what you're going to see is continuing improvements on what we're currently doing. I mean, drones, the concept of drones has been around for a while, and it's finally started to really catch on. I mean, you had Intel doing it, Verge doing it, but you didn't really see it. Now it's starting to catch on. So I think you've got a few years of this. What's coming next is our fireworks design software is going to incorporate right now the drone video into it so we can present to a client a full show. And I think you're going to see the possibility of easier design software for drones so you could do more with it. Fireworks, I think, are going to continue to improve. We're starting to incorporate proximate smoke devices for daylight shows. Uh, that I think is going to change daytime events. You might see one of the problems with FC Cincinnati is most of their kick is at 7:30,
Mhm.
and it's still light out.
Right.
So we'll be able to incorporate smoke devices that are clean burning. I think you'll see flame effects improve, and I mean, there's already some other machines out there that I'd like to get my hands on at 360-degree rotation and stuff like that. So I think it's just what do we got and what can we do with it? All right. So the fireworks design software got to a point where how can we exploit this? What else can we do next with this and with fireworks? So right now we can do um, one shots in a 360-degree wheel. So we'll mount these 3 ginormous wheels on the Taylor Southgate Bridge. It's basically a round mounting bracket that's got multiple rings and load it with 2001 shots and zip, and just do all kinds of different patterns with it. What else can we do with that? Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan, you mentioned earlier we had some questions on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
So what are those questions for Joe?
Okay, so questions for Joe on Twitter. So first one is from @Ben Schroetz. He's got a question about drones. He said, do drones run on a pre-programmed flight path exactly, or do they take more of a hybrid approach to account for weather and things like that, such as wet wind? And if they do account for wind and and the like, how do they deal with failures, like if they lose GPS or something like that?
Yeah. So they fly in a pre-programmed flight path, and that flight path is determined by a GPS fix. So basically, a grid or oh God, what do they call it? I can't remember what they call it. It's like an air box, so to speak.
Okay.
That's defined in which they fly in. So the show is loaded into each drone, and they fly to a position. And the only time they're in communication with the ground station is getting an update. Otherwise, they're getting communication from GPS up to 21 satellites.
Hmm.
So if wind is moving them, they're going to account for it and move back into the position they're supposed to be in. If one of them does have an issue and gets confused, loses a GPS signal, has a battery issue, it auto lands. It basically comes straight back down.
To the landing site or straight down?
Comes straight down.
Straight down.
Yeah.
Fortunately, these drones aren't quite there, but they'll return to base,
Hmm.
like some of your aerial drones, photography drones. So they'll land straight back down. So that's why the site you're flying over is of particular importance to. I mean, there is a drone at Kings Island that will probably be found when a roller coaster is built at some point. One came down in the woods. So, but that's what they do. They will come straight down. So that's why parameters are in place. You don't fly them over spectators. You fly them a distance away from spectators, and they stay within the defined box. They may launch and move to a box, but never launch over spectators or over anything that could be damaged by a falling drone.
So does each individual drone have its own flight path? Like, for example, does drone number 25 always make the top left corner of the K in Kings Island, or is it
It's they and some of this is over my head,
right?
and I think some of it's over a lot of people's heads, except for the guy that wrote the software. But no, they all go out into a different position, but based on their positioning as to where they are on the initial grid, determines what their flight path is.
Okay, so they don't. So I've seen them lay them out. So it's a grid. It's like a matrix.
Yeah,
They don't necessarily have to put them in the same spot every time.
no, it's not a numbered. It's got to go here. It's got to go here. No, they figure out where they are.
So they communicate with each other.
Well, they communicate with each other. That's where it gets over my head. So I'm not entirely sure.
I always
How
thought
it
about that
works.
because, like, especially up. I mean, like when they're making their images and stuff, how high up are they?
Your maximum ceiling is 400 feet.
Okay.
We had a variance at Kings Island to go to 600,
Okay.
but it's because we needed to clear trees. We needed to get over the top. It's because the bottoms of the images were starting to get obscured. So, but typically they're flying at 400 feet max altitude.
Okay. So my concern would be that if there was like a wind gust that they couldn't communicate, they could hit each other. But
There is a wind parameter, and typically the manufacturer recommends whatever would keep you from shooting a fireworks display, which is 20 miles an hour and up,
Hmm.
is what you probably shouldn't be flying.
Yeah. I mean that makes total sense. So the next question's also about drones. So it's from @JimFlugel. He said, "Who thought of the design pictures for the drones in the sky?" But he also asked, non-drone question, was the Eiffel Tower ever considered to be part of the display? Was it there were ever talks of shooting stuff off the Eiffel Tower or whatever? I think that's what he means.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we've talked about, and we did it a couple times in the past.
Mm,
I don't know if you mind if I answer this because I can tell you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it goes back to prior to Leslie. His name escapes me.
Doug Kramer.
Doug Kramer.
yeah.
I mean, the biggest concern was you have to shut that feature down.
Hmm.
So it makes it inaccessible to guests. And, it's interesting at amusement parks because if your park was not designed with fireworks in mind, in that this is our fireworks display site forever,
Hmm.
like at Disney or something like that, eventually the park encroaches. So now you start shutting down rides. And, park GMs don't like to do that because patrons don't like it. So it would require shutting the tower down. And I just don't think that was with the Beast going down, with Racer going down, and Orion. We just didn't want to lose anything else.
Yeah. Well, and to clarify, just from, an industry standpoint, it's you're not necessarily saying that we decided, but then the day before we cut it out.
No,
It's when big projects are discussed, everything is on the table.
yeah.
Everything is on the table. So no matter what, were you considering using the Eiffel Tower? Of course you were. That was
Sure.
definitely mentioned at some point.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ask Lance what he wanted to do off the top of it. It involved a lot of propane and a nice giant Prometheus head.
Yeah, but Joe's right though
Yeah.
about shutting down different attractions and that. I mean, there's some guests that come to the park, and that is a big thing that they want.
Yeah.
That attraction, they want to ride it at night or something like that. So you want to limit as much as you can.
Yeah, I know. And also, a lot of people like to watch the fireworks from the Eiffel Tower.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of eliminates that. But I guess that's the trade-off involved. I mean, having the show the size that it is, eliminates the beast and, part of the racer and so on. So
Someday something special will come up and it'll be worth shutting it down for one day. That was the other problem. It was 85 days. At a certain point in the day or evening, it'd have to be shut down.
yeah. Yeah. And then, a lot of people that are probably watching, listening to this are thinking like 9:50, shut it down. But not necessarily, because there's a lot of work that goes into
Yep.
it. And sometimes it's not safe for the average Joe to be around when the pyrotechnicians who know what they're doing are handling product
Yeah.
close to them. So, all right. But who designed the pictures of the drones in the sky? Not the pictures, the pictures that the drones made, I think is what they're saying.
So the images came from the show producer, Michael Roddy. He worked with a gentleman by the name of Mason Hayes from Verge Aero, who is a brilliant drone designer. We used Mason because he was well versed in their software. We had to turn something around rather quickly, and he does a fantastic job. So he did all of the design work.
Yeah, that's cool. So next question's from at Lonald P. Dakes. So you already answered this question. He asked, "What's your favorite theme park fireworks show that you produce?" You mentioned Fun Fireworks in 50. What's the second place?
Theme park?
He says theme park. Yeah.
I like the stage show at Cedar Point.
Which
We
year?
did for the 150th,
That was a great show.
which actually we did. And it was supposed to be in 2020. Unfortunately, but they did it in 2020 or in 21. So
Mhm.
yeah, that was a neat show. It was a
That was
fun
an
show to
amazing
work
show.
on.
Yep, I was there for opening night of that. That
Yep.
was a great show.
Yep.
That was so cool because you had the stuff shooting from behind the stage and the scaffolding, and it was on the beats of 150, and then it would
Yep.
shoot. That was
That
so
was a nice show.
yeah, that was a great show. What was your favorite non-theme park show that you've ever been involved with? You got plenty of Riverfest under your belt, and
I mean, there's a
all these
lot of Riverfest
competitions.
shows that were really good. Last year was really good, but understand we only see those shows on video. I don't
Yeah.
get to see it in person. I mean, and we've done a number of shows, competing shows in Montreal
Mhm.
in the '90s and the 2000s that were just spectacular. We did a competition show in 2015 in Montreal that was just gorgeous. I think those, but then there's just some nice little backyard shows. You do a little show over in Anderson Township for Anderson Days that I did a number of years, and it's a small it's a big festival, but it's just a decent sized show. I'm like, that's really good.
I live in Fairfield, and the show that you do out there,
At Harbin Park?
yeah, and that is a spectacular show too. And it seems like that one never ends. It just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, it's like the 30-minute show. That was my second show that I ever did on my own when it used to be at Forest Fair Mall for the first couple of years, and they moved it to Harbin Park, the highest point in Butler County. So you can see that for miles because you can see for miles up there. It's a
Yeah,
really great site. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, Forest Fair Mall, if that's Fairfield fireworks, that might not be a great spot. I mean, it's open, it's wide open, but as far
Yeah.
as like
Oh God,
vantage point.
this was in '91 and '92. We did it off the parking garage.
Oh,
So it was a long. We did it 2 years, and then they moved it. Fairfield took it over and moved it up to Harbin Park, and it's been there ever since.
Yeah, that's a great show. I highly recommend if you
Yeah.
live in, especially like in Butler County, whatever, that you check that one out.
Yeah, well, there's a guy in the neighborhood right below us who shoots one heck of a show in his backyard too. We sit there and watch, and I don't know what he's got. And every year I look. When I used to shoot it, I used to look at at Chief and say, Chief, you got to do something about that. One of these days you're going to get somebody hurt. And he's like, Joe, by the time I got over there, they'd be gone. I was like, yeah, enough said. So, but every year we get to watch these guys shoot shells in his backyard. So.
Shoots actual
He
shells.
shoots shells.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So
It's not just risking his health; it's risking your
everybody
house.
else. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so at B Schroets asked, how long does it take to pull off the WBN fireworks? When do you start planning for that?
We talk about it all year. What do we want to do on the river? Right after the show, we'll chat about what looked good, what didn't look good when we're trying next year, and just off and on throughout the year. When we finally get the soundtrack, usually it's right around or right after the 4th of July when we sit down and start scripting. Is when we're really into it. And then, it takes about a week to 10 days to pack it, put everything together. And then we're on site for about 7 days. Takes us 6 days to load it in and get it set up and ready to shoot. We're a day on each bridge, or maybe a day and a half on each bridge, and then a day to tear everything down. So it's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a crew of about 20, 15 on the barges all day, and then it balloons to about 25 or so when we bring the bridges in. So there's a lot that goes into it, but we start pretty much really planning it right after the 4th of July.
How many shots, like firework shots, are in a typical Riverfest show? Yeah, it's fun, right?
I think it was about 240 modules this year, firing modules, which carry 32 shots per plus its finale. Don't hold me to this, but I think it was about 7,200 items.
Wow.
And some of those are multiple shot candles and cakes.
Mm-hmm. And that's one.
Yeah,
one
that's
shot.
each eye. Yeah, so if you have a 50 shot cake, you add 50 to that thing. If you have 150 shot cakes, add that number to it.
So, just to add to this question though, the average person finds out like the theme of it, usually about a week before, 2 weeks before. When do you find out? I know that you get the soundtrack right around the 4th of July, you mentioned, but 1 year was space themed. When did you find that out? Did you find out when you got the soundtrack?
Usually in the spring.
Oh, really?
They start throwing themes around.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all we got from Twitter. Joe, thanks for being on the show. Once again, if anyone's interested in shooting fireworks with Joe, he's got a shooter school coming up in the spring, and we're going to link to the information involved with that in the description of both the video and the the podcast apps. So give it a shot. It's fun. It's hard work, but it's rewarding. Joe, do you have any final words of wisdom before we?
No, I just thank you guys for having me, and I hope your listeners enjoy the show.
All right, we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week.